Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second episode of Roundabout Sports presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. I'm the maestro Jeremy Carp. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening. Honestly, Mother Nature and Missouri weather decided to screw around with us a little bit and mess with some of our technical stuff, but you know what? Not on my watch. We're going to get this done. So, tonight it's another special episode because we don't have just one guest. We don't have just two guests. We got three guests on the show. Each one of them bringing something amazing to the table. We got Keith Barackus Johnson who's going to kick us off very shortly, and he's got so much to bring because he's going to be hyping himself up because he's got Black Wrestlers Matter coming up at the North County Recreation Complex this Saturday, and he's got himself a hell of a fight ahead of him. Later on, we're going to talk to a very dear friend of mine, Dane McGuire. He is a professional wrestling writer, a UFC writer, an MMA writer. He is very distinguished when it comes to his 5K and marathon career as well. And to finish it off, we're going to have ourselves Shawn Balint, who is a longtime voiceover artist, a broadcaster, a high school sports announcer, a radio DJ, a host. It runs the gamut for him. Journalism and broadcasting's in his blood, and we've talked a lot before the show, and we share some of the same opinions on where the state of things are going these days. But nevertheless, you know what? I'm gonna just say one thing before we start. So, not always right. But when I am right, even then, sometimes I don't like being right. This time is one of those times. I knew it. I just knew it. People didn't believe me. I knew the Rams were going to beat the Bengals. That's right. Super Bowl 56 was this past Sunday, and the Los Angeles Rams defeated the Bengals 23-20 in a very close and albeit controversial matchup at the end. Nevertheless, don't get me wrong. Stan Kroenke can piss off. Can't stand the guy. Never will. Even if he brought another team back, I never will stand Stan Kroenke. But got love for Aaron Donald. Got love for Johnny Hecker. Got love for Rob Havenstein. Why? Those are St. Louis Rams players right there. Those were guys that were homegrown here in the Lou as Rams players. And they finally got their ring. They were on a lot of mediocre teams. I mean, of course you would be. You were coached by Jeff Fisher for a while. But anyway, here we are, folks. So now football season's over. Baseball has no start in sight. You know, normally it's no end in sight. Well, baseball has no start in sight. Blues won, which we always love here in St. Louis. But enough delaying the inevitable, because it's something that's not worth delaying. Like I said, folks, this Saturday, February 19th, at the North County Recreation Complex, which is the address 2577 Redmond Avenue in St. Louis, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, events in independent professional wrestling will be taking place. It's the second annual Black Wrestlers Matter, and it's coming to St. Louis. And my first guess is going to be taking on not just Isaiah Broner, not just Doc Simmons, but Eli Rossi as well in a fatal four-way match. And it's my pleasure to bring on this gentleman, one of the most badass of all of the badasses there is. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard to the Roundabout Sports Show, Barackus.
What's up, my man? How you doing today?
I'm good, dog. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there, man. Getting ready for Saturday at the North County Rec in North County. You know, one of the biggest matches of the year for me. Might be my biggest match of the year. Coming up. So I'm excited.
Oh, absolutely. And so, okay, the first thing, what does this mean? This event, it's Black History Month,
Hmm.
and Mike Outlaw's done such an amazing part in helping get so much of this
Absolutely,
together.
absolutely.
What does it mean to you to be a part of this event?
Oh man, it means the world to me. Without getting too much behind the scenes, I'm this event is so important. It's like I put it on my post the other day. This is one of the most important events, not just in that's going on this month, but this is one of the most important events in St. Louis wrestling history because you're literally having a whole black wrestler show, African American wrestlers to showcase not just some of the best in St. Louis wrestling, but around the world, like
Right.
around the whole United States. I mean, Stephen Wolf, Xavier Walker, I mean, heck, Isaiah Bronner. I mean, he's a badass, and we're about to get it on Sunday, with Eli, one of the younger guys down there,
Good
you
friend of
know,
mine. I know what
Good
he's up
g
to.
oh, yeah. I mean, my man is on it, and we can't forget Doc Simmons, um, um, small guy in the
No.
match, but I mean, I'm not underestimating any of these guys. So, I'm ready to go in and kick some tail and take some names and really show not just St. Louis what Barackus is about, because most of the people in St. Louis know what Barackus is about. But I want this show to get out there and show that, man, this is not just one of the best big men in St. Louis, but one of the best big men in the Midwest, but one of the best big men in the country. That's where I'm trying to prove Saturday. Still with me?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, so here's my thing.
Oh,
Being in
okay.
a one-on-one matchup's one thing.
Uh huh.
Being in a triple threat match isn't. Yeah, I'm still with you. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah, just for a minute you had the frozen. I was just making sure we're
Oh,
good. Okay,
like
but
I
we're
said,
good.
man, that's Mother Nature. I'm not going anywhere.
Exactly.
I'm sticking through this till the very end.
Okay.
So, like I said, being in a one-on-one match is one thing.
Uh-huh.
Being in a triple threat match is another.
Yes.
You are going to be in a fatal four-way match.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and you've gone through your opponents, and I know you've extensively studied them as best as you can.
Mhm.
What is your big strategy going into this? Because you don't have to be, involved with this one of the matches. You don't have to be involved in the finish.
Yeah.
So, what's your game plan going into this?
Divide and conquer. You know what I mean? Baracus, if you've ever seen any of my matches, is he comes in, he fires in. It's like a car accident, So boom one, boom two, boom three, boom four. Whoever's in there, quick boom, one, two, three. That's the way I'm trying to handle it Saturday. You know, um, I mean, of course, we got some of the best. My three other opponents are, Eli's on the rise right now. So like, it's not just about me making a name for myself. These other guys are trying to make a name for themselves too. You know, Doc Simmons, I haven't had the chance to really work with him for real yet, but I'm sure this is going to be fun. For me to toss his little ass around. Isaiah Browner, I mean, that's a bad dude. He's a big boy, so I mean, he likes to hit people. Well, guess what? I like to hit people hard too. So we're gonna have fun hitting each other very hard at the North County Rec on Saturday.
How does it feel for you knowing that, we're just a few days away from the show,
Uh huh.
but I checked about 2 or 3 days ago, if not well earlier. I think it was actually a week earlier. The front row seats were already sold out, and there's only a few general admission seats left.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, that this is big. I know for a fact I have a lot of family and friends coming to this show Saturday, more than normal. Because I think it's an important show. We need it to be successful. Just so that you can have a Black Wrestlers Matter 3. You know, in St. Louis. So like that's why it's so important that this show is not only successful but it's also, we want to make sure that, everybody comes out to it, but we want to also make sure we're putting on a good show for the folks so they want to come back.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's it's really good because, having that annual event in such a historic city like St. Louis when it comes to
absolutely.
wrestling means
Yes.
so much. It's bringing multiple communities together, in my opinion. It's bringing the black community together. It's bringing the wrestling community together, and it's just
Uh-huh.
bringing the casual fan. um audience
Exactly.
together. Like
Wrestling
it's
is.
the
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
Go ahead.
you're good. I was just gonna say, like, yeah, wrestling is a great way to bring
Yeah.
families together, and I think doing it for such a good cause because there is a big meaning behind Black Wrestlers Matter. You know, it's
Yes.
a big movement that's been going on over the past couple years,
Uh huh.
and I think, obviously I can't speak for any of the guys involved. I do know some of them involved, but for guys to be a part of this event, you'd already made it clear how much it means to you, and I know, and I'm almost sure it means the same to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it means the world. Once I found out quite a while ago that this was the ideal on the table, I was hoping that it was going to manifest itself. And once it really started manifesting itself late last year, I mean, we was ready to roll. Like I was like right now, well, who do you want me to go against? What's the match gonna be? Like I was ready for this moment, because I feel that this is gonna put the spotlight on St. Louis even more than what it is has been in the last year, and that's why I'm so excited about
Mhm.
Saturday. Like so make sure if you haven't got your tickets, get your tickets because you're about to see a show of not just some of the best black wrestlers, but some of the best wrestlers in the Midwest, in the United States. I mean, this is you're gonna get a nice treat on Saturday. So
Well, without a doubt. I was talking with Outlaw a little bit last night.
mm,
Another match he was excited for the event, and like on top of yours, he's excited for all these matches. But if there's one match he's also really excited for, it's Tootie Lynn versus Big Swole.
ooh,
What's your
Tootie.
thoughts on that one?
Um, I mean, number one, Big Swole is we've all know what Big Swole can do. Recently AEW wrestler, and she has made a big
Hmm.
name on herself on the Indies. But
Yes.
it's very hard to argue not just any independent wrestler, but any female independent wrestler who has had a bigger year than Tootie in the last year. So Tootie is by far, I think if there was a breakout star last year, Tootie was the breakout star. Now it's just Tootie's a star at this point. With her still on NWA and everything, I just can't. That's one that's going to be a curtain sellout, as they like to say. You're going to see a lot of the boys looking out the curtain because I think that's your main event that night. I want to say, I mean, we got, of course, Camaro Jackson versus ACH, which is, I mean, that's another one
Oof.
that's going to be hot. So, and of course, Jossie, who is probably one of my most favorite indie wrestlers right now. I actually had the honor of having Jossie's first ever match. I didn't remember this, and we
Did
had a
you?
Yes,
Oh wow.
yeah. So it's one of those weird things that we were talking about it at a show, and I'm like, I had your first match, and he was like, Yeah, you don't remember, blah blah blah, and I'm like, he was, yeah, and I'm like, wow, and I mean, to see where he's come, probably one of the best mic men in the industry, to face, I mean, the crowd king of St. Louis wrestling, Mike Outlaw. You know what I mean? So
He's the
we're
top
in.
ranked guy when it comes to Missouri.
Yeah, he's the top rate guy until I take his title one day, but that's a different
Whew.
story for a different time.
Woo!
You
Oh
know,
yeah, I was gonna say the problem. Look, getting to the top is one thing, but staying at the top is a whole nother story.
friendship is one thing, but I mean, at some point, I was Missouri State champ. I won my belt back, so I know that before it's all said and done for Barackus, before I hop on my horse and ride out, I want that Missouri title back at some point.
I was,
But so
it's interesting. Like I see Camaro Jackson. He's now a duo, yeah, dual Dynamo Pro champion, and it
uh-huh.
cracks me up because I've known him for many years. Great guy.
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of announcing multiple matches of his, and it
Uh-huh.
cracks me up that the one match that I was not available to announce and do
Uh-huh.
commentary for was the one where he beat Adrian Surge for the title to become duo champion. I'm just like, are you kidding me? But to see
I
him go against ACH is big.
Yes, that kid is gonna break out. if anybody I know is gonna really break out, and I'm just looking at Dynamite right now, and I'm seeing some familiar people. If you guys are watching it in the background, those are some familiar people from locally. But anyway, yeah, that kid's about to break out. Like it's a matter of time. He's got the physique, he's got the looks, he's great in the ring. Camaro Jackson is and his tag team partner Kenny Afonso. You got to keep an eye on that kid too. Um, both of
Yeah,
them are going to be breakout stars. So
very much so. And so my next question, it's actually not related to the Black Wrestlers Matter event, but it's something, you and I connect a lot. And I
okay,
saw you say this, and this is in regards to the Super Bowl halftime show. Okay, you already know where I'm probably going with this.
uh huh.
So, what were your thoughts on this halftime show?
I loved
On
it.
this year's halftime?
I absolutely loved it. I love number one. I don't know how old you are. I don't mind
I'm
saying it.
26. I'll be 27 in
Okay,
June.
I'm 35 years old. Okay, so I'm not afraid to say that I look very damn good for my age and still got some
Damn straight.
miles left in the tank. But for a kid that grew up in I could say what years when music really meant something, the 90s, the
Hmm.
2000s, junior high, to have Dr. Dre on stage and Snoop Dogg and Eminem. I mean, I was a junior high kid. I was a teenage kid when Eminem was on the rise. Mary J. Blige, you know, Kendrick Lamar. I mean, all of those things right there. Like this is good stuff. But this is my thing.
All right.
Over the last couple of days, I think people have forgot something. Okay, and this is coming from a guy who loves music. Okay, I love
Same.
rap. I love R&B. Heck, I like the Backstreet Boys. I mean, I like a little bit of everything, okay? But this is a guy who loves Prince and loves the whole West Coast celebration we had. But people are forgetting in 1993, the King of Pop did a performance at the Super Bowl to shut down everything, okay? The world was shut down. The man stood on stage literally for probably about 2 minutes, which wasted millions of dollars, I'm sure, and they probably cussing in the background and
Oh yeah.
shut it down. So I think that it's not really, and I think I was looking at the post and I'm looking at some people saying this and that. This is my point I'm trying to make. People forget about that. So if you're young and you're not familiar, get on YouTube, 10 minutes, you make the judge for yourself. But I'm a big Michael Jackson guy. So I just think people have kind of forgotten that that man shut it down. So
So this was my thoughts on it. First off, there was so much nostalgia that waved through. Just when Dre and Snoop, you could have done the show, and if it was just Dre and Snoop, I'd be
yes.
set. I would be fine.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
and then you get 50 Cent in there, you get Kendrick, you get Eminem, you get Mary J. Blige. And I'm like, okay, now we're
I
getting
forgot
somewhere.
about 50 too.
Yeah,
But yeah,
50. Well,
50.
he
Yeah.
wasn't even originally. He was the surprise. That was the
Yeah,
surprise. He wasn't
exactly.
announced.
Uh,
So you know, I'm an old soul because I may be 26, going 27, but I'm an old soul. I grew
okay.
up listening to the Beatles. I grew up on Zeppelin, Michael
Okay.
Jackson, Prince.
Absolutely.
Like, so the halftime shows, like, I thought in my lifetime, Prince's was off the chart.
It was.
Like,
It
there was
was.
something so special about
It
Prince's
rained.
halftime show, and it
It
rained. It
rained
literally rained.
right then. Yeah, right
And
when he was singing Purple Rain, it started raining. Yes.
yeah,
It was
and
magical.
it was so magical. And first off, the thing with Michael Jackson, his halftime show, I remember I've watched it on YouTube, and it's epic because he can literally just walk into a room and everything just becomes that much more awesome. The
Uh-huh.
whole room just lights up. Doesn't even need
Yeah.
a light bulb in it. It'll just light up.
Uh-huh.
And so, you're used to him being on in arenas, performing concerts and such, but to have him have this elaborate stage doing this big halftime performance, I mean, at the biggest event in sports,
Yes.
that was unprecedented. Like,
Exactly.
because for the longest time, and not everybody realizes this, but for the longest time, the Super Bowl really didn't have that celebrity halftime show.
Uh-huh.
The first Super Bowl was literally just people on jetpacks, which don't get me wrong. In 2023, if I see somebody on jetpacks in the Super Bowl, I'm going to be freaking excited.
That's pretty cool still. I mean, even from
For
1969.
1966, for
Yeah,
that to happen, I'm set.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
but
So,
then you'd have dancing, you'd have the cheerleaders of the teams, you'd have marching bands play. But then finally, they're like, okay, we can actually really make some revenue off this. So you get the Stones, you get the Who, you get Michael Jackson, you get Bruno Mars, Beyonce. I mean, you get JT and Janet Jackson, but we all know what happened after that. But you get all these well-known celebrities out there, these
yeah,
musicians, and aside from the Black Eyed Peas, honestly, I've enjoyed all these halftime shows. The Weekend
yeah,
last year, it wasn't as memorable, but I think the pandemic also had a lot to do with it because you were
absolutely.
so limited in where you can be and what you can do.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the setup this year was just phenomenal, like with the house
Yes.
and everything, and just everybody's telling a story. I just got a kick when I saw you were talking about, with Michael Jackson and his halftime show. I'm like, you know what? He's got a pretty damn good point. I mean, you
Nobody
got to show
has
our love to
really taught.
Prince, but
Now, think about it this way. We're talking literally 1993 now. So what is it? 2000. So you're almost talking 30 years ago. Like, so a lot of
ugh,
people might not really remember the fact that Michael Jackson shut it down, and it was like the best halftime show for the longest. Like, I mean, it was untouchable until maybe Prince, and then maybe, then you turn around and of course, I mean, this last one was awesome. I mean, because it's such a big part. Hip hop has become now such a big part of not only just music culture, but American culture. You know what I mean? If you're,
right.
we're talking Dr. Dre is a 60-year-old man now, right? Or getting, we're tapping close to 60, right? Snoop is,
Oof.
I think, just turned 50. Mary J is
Yep.
probably in her 50s. 50 is probably close to 50. You know, I
Right.
mean, no pun intended there.
No
And
pun intended, but it
Em
works.
I looked up Eminem's age. I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, Eminem's not 50. Eminem is turning 50 this year. So these are guys who are now old enough to literally be grandparents, right? At this point, you know, and they're now like, this is like, for everybody who was not liking it. I mean, I think it was mostly 60-year-old people who
Yeah.
didn't like, who maybe just didn't feel it. But even then, I mean, that was such a big part of music for like so long, from NWA to Eminem to Mary J. Blige tapping it on the R&B, scene, to Kendrick Lamar today, 50. I mean, 50 came on the scene and punched everybody in the face, with Get Rich or Die Trying. So, like, we could go all day about music over here, so as you can see. So,
No, absolutely.
yeah, so, but
I see that's another thing. So when I have you on again, I'm gonna tell you, I know there's gonna be plenty of music that I'll have to bring up. Just because it's roundabout sports doesn't mean that we can't have any music in there. I
I
mean,
could
come
talk
on, you
about, I'll
gotta
talk
love
about
music.
Journey with you. I could talk about whatever you want, man. My gym playlist, and my playlist goes from 80s to 90s to rap to today. I'm
Yes,
trying to get into
I
some
love it.
today's stuff a little bit, to just listening to wrestling themes all day on my thing, so like, I mean, I it's legit, like,
Uh,
I'm pretty fun
All right,
guy.
there we go. Favorite wrestling theme. Favorite wrestling theme song ever.
Ooh.
Go. There we go.
Um, Golly, man. You hit me
I
with
got
that out of
mine.
nowhere.
It's speaking of out of nowhere, that leads into what I was gonna say. Randy Orton's first one, post evolution.
Burning in the light.
Yeah.
Okay,
hmm
that's a good one.
That's probably that's my
You
favorite.
you know, let me do this for you. I'll even give everybody a treat out there. Let me do generations. Okay,
All right, that works.
so let's go classic WWF era. Okay,
Okay.
I think hands down is Real American. Like, Real American
Yeah.
gets little shoot name Keith, my name, but like, little Keith at in Belleville, Illinois, with his Hulk Hogan bandana on. Yeah, that was it. Um, NWA, early NWA. I love Sting's first thing with the guitar riff. I just used to be like,
Yes.
that was my duh, 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 duh. Like it's like legit good stuff, like um and I think I love Stone Cold. Like if you're talking Attitude Era, Stone Cold's Disturbed thing. When he had Disturbed do his music, that was really good.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. A lot of people didn't know, like, a lot of people, newer wrestling fans, don't realize that it wasn't just the standard glass shattering
Yeah,
theme song.
it was
Like, he
Disturbed.
had
That was
multiple incarnations of it,
I love that one.
and
That's
then
like
one
my
where man was disturbed.
yeah. Like late WCW, I
I
mean,
love it.
hands down, it's the Wolfpack's
Well,
theme. So yeah, so and I love John Cena's Word Life theme too. That just brings the blood in Batista, So, but if I had to go my favorite out of all of them, I think I'm honestly gonna go just nostalgia. I got to go Real American, I guess. Because I mean, it brings back something really fun and warm inside, I guess. So that's just me.
okay.
Yeah. So you still there? You froze up on me on my end. Okay, we're good. All right. So what else you got for me, brother?
Awesome, man. Well, I got two things. So first,
Okay.
you, you gotta
Think we froze up.
well, that was
That was weird, bro. If for a minute that we froze up, I was sending you the message.
oh boy. Like I said, folks, let me tell you all something. It is currently storming out here in the Metro St. Louis area.
Yeah, I can see that.
So
So,
so
yeah.
it's not being pleasant to us, but like I said, I'm coming if it goes, I'm coming right back in because that's how we roll.
I was here. I didn't do
I love
nothing
it, man.
crazy.
Well, it's interesting. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is you're gonna be on the show again, right? Because I'd love to have you on.
Absolutely. I mean, when I'm always an open invitation, and if I'm available, I would love to come back on.
All right, man. It's a great pleasure. Now, last thing before you go, give us that little plug about this Saturday's event because I already be there, but for those that don't know about it,
Absolutely. I would say anybody out there who has the pleasure of taking their time to watch the show, please come out to the North County Rec Center on Saturday for Black Wrestlers Matter. I think it's actually, is it two or three? I don't know which one it is, but it's Black Wrestlers Matter St.
it's two,
Louis.
I believe. Yeah, it's Black
Okay.
Wrestlers Matter St. Louis, but I'm pretty sure it's the second one. 'Cause I think last year's the first one was in Des Moines, Iowa. So
The one was during the pandemic, but
yeah,
regardless, this is the one that's in St. Louis. And I mean, you're gonna literally see some of the best African American black wrestlers that are in the area, like it just all over the United States. So if you have a little time in your schedule, make sure you come check us out. Come see Big Barackus take on four other big men, and can't forget Doc Simmons. He's not big, but I mean he's gonna be there, and he'll probably kick me in my face or something. But I mean, but he probably won't really hurt me. But anyway, yeah, come check us out. I mean, that's gonna be a hard hitting match. And I think if my memory serves me correct, I think Tootie and Big Swole are capping it off. Women's wrestling is huge right around. The women's movement is big, but it's alive here in St. Louis. Based off the NWA, we get to see Tootie really show up against one of the best female wrestlers, not just black female wrestlers, but one of the best female wrestlers in the United States. And just a Camaro Jackson, Mike Outlaw, Xavier Walker, Stephen Wolf, Myron Reed is going to be here versus, I think, is he going against ATL?
he's actually going against Kenny Alfonso.
Kitty Alfonso. Kitty Alfonso. I thought, okay, gotcha. So, like, I mean, this show is going to be like legit great. So like, this is gonna be a good show. So let's come out and support it and just enjoy it. Sit back and enjoy it, guys. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely. Well, Baracus, I hope you kick some serious ass on Saturday, man. I can't wait
Um,
to come see you. So,
most
thank you so
definitely.
much.
No
Thank you so
problem,
much
my
for being
man.
on tonight, man.
No
Be
problem.
well.
You just let me know whenever you want me back, okay?
All right, it's a great pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Baracus, who will be at the North County Recreation Complex this Saturday night. Well, I will say it has been quite interesting so far. Like I said, we've had a couple hiccups technical wise, but you know what? Like I said, Missouri weather ain't going to stop us. Just like in life, I get knocked down, I get right back up, keep going. That's how we roll. And speaking of rolling, it's time we roll into our next guest. Ladies and gentlemen, he is a very, very talented journalist. He has been, it's in his blood. He has been working with Dynamo Pro. He's been working with United States Fight League. He's worked with WAKO Team USA Kickboxing, Cage Nation, the Webster Kirkwood Times. Ladies and gentlemen, he is a sports journalist, an Ironman VR racer, an avid runner, a weightlifter, and a combat sports media dude. It is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce my dear friend to Roundabout Sports, Dane McGuire.
Hey man, how you doing? First of all, thank you for having me on the show. Thank you for taking the time. We've been friends for a minute, and I'm not gonna take it easy on you tonight. I don't want the fans thinking you came up with that introduction. I know you got that off Facebook, but thank you for having me on, man. Seriously.
Hey man, it's how you introduce him. That's what matters. I saw you shaking your head in the queue like, hey, he got me. So,
Yeah.
oh,
Well,
so
again, thank you for having me on. Seriously.
no, it's my pleasure, Dane. So the first thing I have to ask you is this.
Mm-hmm.
What is WWE doing trying to bring Stone Cold back for WrestleMania 38?
Well, I mean, so this conversation, if we stuck it to pro wrestling, can go off the rails real quick. But I think in regard to Stone Cold, and that's not even hitting on the AEW news. I think it goes back to the same situation you have with stars like Goldberg. And even although I like Lesnar 2022, you can make that argument about Brock Lesnar. It's been a problem they've had since basically they went PG, essentially since the ruthless aggression era ended. You're capitalizing on attitude era stars, ruthless aggression era stars, because they hamstring their performers. So, a long time ago, maybe even, as recently as a few years ago, I probably would have been about that one-off match. I was just kind of getting into wrestling around the time of WrestleMania 20. I grew up with the shows on tape, and then I would watch Ruthless Aggression era stuff live, because that's how I grew up. So Stone Cold was in his GM phase and still giving people the stunner when I was first coming into it. So selfishly, I kind of want it. Do I want it knowing that he has the neck issues that he has, and that he's 57, and that they are relying on past stars because they can't create their own anymore? I don't think so.
No, I am not at all a fan with the fact that they are trying to convince Stone Cold. Because first off, Stone Cold's last match was against The Rock at WrestleMania 19 in Seattle. And let me tell you, it was a great match.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since Owen Hart accidentally, dropped Stone Cold on the botched power driver back in 97, Stone Cold's neck just degenerated, and it got worse and worse, and it made it harder for him to move and wrestle.
Right.
So, it's like you said, do we want to see that be put to the test? Like, back in the ring in a match that the only reason WWE wants it to happen is because they can't make new stars? No. At least I personally don't want to see that. I mean, you can market WrestleMania by actually telling good stories and consistently building up characters. the past 2-3 years, WWE does not seem to know how to do that. I
think it goes way beyond 2-3 years, but
even so, it probably does. It probably goes well beyond that. Shit, I'll give it, how far? 8 years?
at least
Honestly, yeah,
10
at
years.
least 8 years. I feel like it peaked at the Authority. Because the Authority, as annoying as it was with the Best for Business, when you look back on it, that was a pretty damn good thing going on. The whole thing with Daniel Bryan and fighting to get to that top spot, that's just how I feel. I don't know about you.
I agree to a point. My only issue with it, because I enjoyed that storyline with Daniel Bryan because it's based in truth. They did see him as a B-plus player. They did think they were doing, what was best for business. He had to fight to get to that spot, and the fans, we all, I say we, because I still am a fan, we all, had to unify and really, force our voice to be heard. My issue is that I thought that storyline got way too drawn out and went way too long. But other than that, I thought it was pretty much perfect.
Yeah, I mean, the thing of it is with those types of stories also, the key part of it is that climb to the top. That's why it takes so long on these stories. Because you're constantly, it's like Kofi in 2019, having to fight against all these odds, going to the Elimination Chamber, having to run the gauntlet, having Biggie and Xavier Woods, have to battle it out for you. I mean, all that. But then what happened when he get to the top? Nothing really. And the same thing, honestly. Okay, Daniel Bryan got injured, so I do get that one.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times on these underdog stories, the wrestlers will get to the top, and then creative has no idea what to do with them because they invested so much time into just focusing on the journey and not what to do after the destination.
Exactly.
And I guess now we should segue into the next big piece of wrestling news, probably the biggest one of the week, and it probably will be for a while. I thought it was a complete joke, like prank when it happened, when I heard this. Cody Rhodes, who co-founded All Elite Wrestling 3 years ago. Cody Rhodes, who, along with the Young Bucks, and his wife Brandy, helped create All Out and sold out the arena in Chicago just because Dave Meltzer didn't think if you're not WWE, you're not going to sell out shit. And Cody Rhodes proved Dave Meltzer wrong in 12 seconds. Now Cody Rhodes is going back to WWE, the place that he left to start AEW. Dane, what do you make of this mess? This blows my mind.
So, I don't follow wrestling from a journalist perspective anymore. I'm a freelancer, so I'm kind of all over the place. But I obviously have been keeping up on the Cody Rhodes situation, and I think I found out about it. I want to say I found about it Tuesday, and I'm still trying to process. Because here's the thing. I'm talking to all my other friends that are wrestling fans, not just you. I sent you a message the other day. What happens to Rhodes to the top now?
Yeah, that's true.
We've lost that. I think with those side endeavors, those reality shows, rights get sold all the time, so it could very easily end up on another network. I hope not. I watched the pilot as part of work, and really wish I didn't have to watch the pilot. I'll leave it at that. But as far as, things with Cody go, the company is up and running. It's self-sustaining. We've heard, for a long time that Tony Khan is now more the one in control as far as creative. We've heard things like, the EVPs as a whole, the four of them aren't as close as they used to be. And, Jim Ross has said it, for performers, for wrestlers, whatever terminology you want to use, it comes down to two things: cash and creative. And if you take Cody's ability to book matches away, that's one thing. There could be a little bit of friction there. I think he also wanted to prove to Vince McMahon, hey, I'm going to go away and I'm going to prove myself. I'm going to prove that I am a star. I think he's done that. And so he's been working since I think December as a free agent. So the only hole there left is money. And as much as I love AEW, I'm not anti-WWE by any means, but
Right.
AEW for me is appointment television, and they're the thing that made wrestling appointment television anymore. So Wednesdays are for wrestling. That's the product I watch. But it all comes back to, he's got to get that bread. And I think even though Shad Khan's a billionaire, I think that WWE has the history and more connections, more resources to make it happen. So, unfortunately, it's just a matter of business. Now, I will toss this question back to you because I was having this debate with a friend as to whether it's a work or not. I was watching something from Fightful today, and Sean Ross Sapp said that if Cody's working the boys, that never works out well because you never get their trust back. Personally, I think if he is working everybody, that takes me back to stuff I had seen as far as the loose cannon Brian Pillman Sr. I think that could be a modern spin on things if it is a work. And so I was having this debate just based off that press release that AEW put out because they mentioned the work that both Cody and Brandy had done with their community outreach efforts and all these different organizations like Culture City. And I said, I don't think this is a work because and I sided with somebody else, some other popular YouTube channel when they broke the news. Their take was you don't put out a statement like that. You don't mention the community outreach and things like that if it's just a work. And to do so, I think would be in poor taste, which leads me to think, that this is the real deal. Now, I refuse to be one of those people that say, he is going to WWE. I acknowledge that's the rumor at the moment. I can't really see any place else for him that makes sense. Like, what's he gonna go do? Go work the indies again, go back to Impact, New Japan, and just kind of bounce around all over the place? No, but I refuse to think that it's quite as much of a done deal as everyone else in the internet wrestling community seems to think that it is, at least at this point.
While I don't think it is a done deal in the sense that he's going back with WWE, I truly believe he is done with AEW, at least on the terms that it is. This is my original thought process for all of this. Okay. When it was first announced that he was reportedly leaving, I thought, okay, remember back when Cody Rhodes had said, if I don't beat Chris Jericho for the title, I will never compete again for the AEW World Championship. Okay, I thought back to that and I was like, well, he just left. That contract becomes null and void. He comes back, new contract, he's competing for the title. He faces off against Hangman Adam Page, gets in that title picture, and the fans already despise him. I mean, so... But then when Amanda Huber, the widow of the late John Huber, otherwise known as Brody Lee, comes out and says this is not a work. She had mentioned that the past few days have been frustrating because she's put in charge of a lot of the community outreach work that Brandy had originally been in charge of. And for her to, instead of saying, oh, I'm honored to be in this new role and to help and continue the success, instead she has to face all these questions, this barrage of, oh, you're not running it, it's a work, it's fake, she'll be back, he'll be back, everything's fine, but you're doing a good job. No, I 100% believe this is legitimate. And I understand. I think it's cool that people do think it's a work. I think it proves that kayfabe can still be alive, even in the social media internet era.
Mm-hmm.
But no, and this is something actually in in a few minutes, we're going to have Shawn on, and I'm going to have you on with him because there's something I want to actually discuss with both of you.
Okay, this is a
And
surprise. I'm in, yeah.
Exactly. This is a surprise to both of you, but I know I know both of you well. We're all journalists here, and I know this is where I'm going to kind of segue into first. But I think with the way the social media journalism is, you just kind of latch onto every little thing and you just roll with it. That's what people do. I mean, Sean Ross Sapp could just go out and say Cody Rhodes is going to MLW tomorrow. We wouldn't say, is he? Are we sure? Because it's Sean Ross Sapp. Why would he lie?
Right, and I think in the case, I think you have to be very careful when you make statements like that, about the combat sports or pro wrestling media. I say combat sports because he covers MMA as well.
Right.
I think that Sean Ross Sapp, because of connections he actually has to the company, has more credibility than xyandz.com. Because
Right.
if you've been a part of pro wrestling journalism, and I'm not going to drop names as far as companies, but I've seen how those sites work, and they do tend to just take things and roll with them. But I do think if we got something from a Sean Ross Sapp, that it does have credibility to it. And I have seen enough of his own podcast where he talks about, like, hey, I'm not putting something out there that I can't back up, And
and I should say that he's an example. I'm not saying as a negative connotation. Like I said, for XYZ.com, that person, whoever it may be, isn't notable enough to use their name. Sean Ross Sapp, is combat sports because he covers so many multi-platforms. So yes, I will reiterate, I do consider him credible in the regard, but there's a lot of people who are trying to be in the position he's in who aren't as credible and could basically leak whatever news they want, whether it be false or true, and it just creates this whole. And at the era of social media, you got millions upon millions of people on there, and all hell just breaks loose. This is we're way past the dirt sheet days of just getting something in a newsletter or in a newspaper, or even just hearing it from a wrestler in an interview on TV. These days I could wake up tomorrow morning and a completely different thing about Cody Rhodes could have been said than what is being said tonight.
And that will probably happen just because this is an ongoing situation. So you're not just being, hypothetical here.
Yeah, I was going to say, because and like I said, I do truly believe this is legit. I just am not sure about whether he's going to WWE. I do believe that he's left AEW. I believe it was on good terms. But I just feel that a lot of questions remain to be answered, that need to be answered before even. Remember, this is the same guy that literally on the very first pay-per-view for AEW took a giant sledgehammer and smashed a throne that was replicas of Triple H's.
Right, and then there's the whole thing with the golden shovel and all of that stuff, and just the constant references. And it's not just him, it's other performers in the WWE locker room, and I don't think they do it, or AEW locker room, I should say. Dropping WWE references in their promos. I don't think they do it as much recently, but that kind of. Even if he got a better contract, he is going to WWE. It's official. There's talks that he might be, surprised for WrestleMania 38. Okay, fine, hunky-dory. He made the best business decision financially. Where my concern comes in is like, there's this thing around the internet about Vince McMahon and a 3-week push. So even if Cody is seen as more of a star, and even if he gets pushed right off the bat, like, who's to say how long it's going to last? Who's to say, it could take one match for Vince to change his mind or to get bored of things. So there's that. And then just whether they're going to call AEW as a company competition or not, they are. And this, like we have said, takes us back to the something similar to the Monday Night War era, and WCW for a hot minute really had WWE on the ropes. So in that same kind of mindset, you don't think Vince McMahon's the type to hold grudges? Of course he is. You'll hear things about like, if it makes business sense, they'll do business, but like, come on.
Yeah, I do feel that. Dane, I'm going to keep you on, but it's about time that I introduce our third guest for the evening, because there's something I really want to discuss with both of you. I've actually discussed this in great detail with him. Ladies and gentlemen, he's been involved in broadcasting throughout the state of Missouri for over 30 years. He's done voiceovers. He's done play-by-plays. He's in the radio. He's a correspondent for St. Louis ABC Radio. He's a good friend, and he's an even more talented person. Ladies and gentlemen, Shawn Balint, welcome to Roundabout Sports.
How you doing, brothers?
Hey, Shawn, how are you?
Doing all right.
Not too bad, not too bad. Just
awesome.
Grinding it out, my friends.
I know you had yourself a pretty busy day at work as well, I believe, didn't you?
Oh, always do. Working the circuit, and it's like, there was a time when I thought being versatile might have hurt me, but now today, I mean, versatility is the name of the game. 5-tool play or whatever it takes.
And that's
you can talk
the first
music, talk sports, and reach outside of not just talk to people your age. Go up, go down like an elevator.
No, absolutely. And that was kind of where I wanted to segue all three of us into this, because we all share the same passion of journalism and broadcasting and things of that nature. I want to ask, what's your guys' thought on this? So, with social media being as powerful as it is in 2022, or just over the past few years in general, but we'll just say as of now, do you think it makes it harder for somebody in our position to really get the credibility and to get that separation, as far as whether it be as your own journalist, being as a broadcaster? Do you think it's harder because there's so many people in social media trying to do what you, myself, what we're doing?
It's something, because there are sites out there. You got somebody, they're not really a journalist per se, and any main source of media doesn't have the ground troops they did. It's just let's say a medium city like Springfield, Illinois, Springfield, Missouri, Columbia. Every significant trial would be covered every day. You just had people covering anything that was news. They were there. Now it's like, if it's certain hours, unless the town's blowing up, no one's going to be there. And so there's like more pressure on you to generate, with phone calls and everything. And then you get some site like quote unquote town leaks. And you get some guy who just happens to know a police officer, a dispatcher, or a firefighter. And they get all this stuff, and they don't have to be held to the same standards. It's really tricky when you talk about immediacy, and immediacy is everything. And hey, sometimes you don't get it. I mean, something big happens on a Saturday night, you may find out about it Monday morning, if at all.
Dane, what do you think?
I really just have to echo each one of his sentiments. Before I moved back to St. Louis, I've been living here since October. Before that, I spent about 4 months in Montana. And I won't give the outlet, but I worked for a daily publication. So there was a lot of, pressure to not only generate those phone calls, to generate stories so that you can fill page space. But if you mess anything up, we're going to hear about it. We're going to have to run corrections. That's one thing that the immediacy is an issue. But even, in small towns, you're competing you might be the only newspaper in town, but there's a chance the radio station beats you to it. And you have to have those connections, or you want to have differing connections. The radio station might have connections to the police chief, where you only know a handful of officers, or what have you. So you want to have different, unique content, but in small towns like that, that's difficult. And then just I to be honest, I understand the need for social media in our profession, and I'm sure both of you do as well. I hate it. Personally, just for my mental health, I'm trying to keep it to a minimum. I still have Facebook, but every now and again, I'll deactivate it. I'll deactivate it rather than delete it, just so that I can, still message people. But I'm sorry.
Oh, that we didn't say anything. I think it was an echo on your end.
Okay. So sometimes I'll deactivate it, but then I run into the issue of, well, like Shawn said, I'll miss something. So then you kind of struggle with that. But I've always been a fan of, and we were talking about this with Sean Ross Sapp before we had Shawn on. I've always been a fan of, I don't really care if I'm first. I care if I'm correct.
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah, I think you got to be that way. I mean, you got to be first once in a while, but yeah, I mean, yeah. What price, what price to be first, and yeah, especially when it's local and a smaller town and it's more personal and everybody knows everybody. And then, it's like, hey, we didn't know about this. We didn't really, we found out on the radio and we shouldn't have, about somebody getting killed or in a car accident. I mean, you want it and you hate that somebody's got it on the internet, but sometimes being classier pays off.
I was going to say, I think you see that a lot where, and honestly, it usually is where tragic things happen, when that line of journalism and morality and having high morals really start to cross the line. I think a prime example of this, because it was going to get big headlines regardless, but it was when Kobe died in the helicopter crash. Who was the first person to find out? Who was the first person to report it? TMZ. I mean, of everybody, of every outlet, even before the wife found out, even before the rest of the families, who found out first? TMZ. And a lot of people said, wow, great job for them for being on the ball. Others said, you got to be classier than that. You got to hold off just for a bit. And that's the thing. Like, when there's platforms out there with 500 million users, I hate to say it, but sometimes you really just can't afford to hold off.
It's tough.
There's a way to go about it. This is how I look at it. There's always a specific way to go about saying something in a way to make it more professional rather than just out there. But at the same time, Shawn, I think you said it perfectly. You always want to be right, but sometimes you have to be first. And you just got to make sure that when you're first, you're right. Because you can only be the second fiddle for so long in doing something. But then if say you're right about something and somebody looks at that and like, hey, this guy's on the ball, let's keep track of him. Let's keep track of what they're working for. And when you have all these different platforms, because it's not just Facebook, it's Twitter, it's Reddit, for crying out loud, and all these other social media avenues. Even Instagram has become a news outlet because so many corporate, all these news stations and everybody uses it. And
same thing about TikTok now as well.
And TikTok, yeah, which I'm not gonna lie, the fact that you can get the journalism from TikTok blows my mind. That just right there.
Yeah, and there's a little danger with you mentioned that stuff. Like, I think there are a few stories where basically like the network level, they let someone tell the story with their cell phone. So they decide when the story and when the video starts and when it stops.
Right.
I think letting people tell their own stories is just a little dangerous. I think we could all manipulate it, just like, gossip, or he did this or she did that. It's just too easy to manipulate that stuff. And I'll tell you what, here's the trick I try to pull off, and it helps a little bit. I try to let people know that, yeah, you know what, I have the name, we just can't release it. Just so it doesn't look like I'm out of the loop. It's just I'm waiting for the green light.
That's
I don't know if
you see a lot.
I don't know if that helps that much with the listeners or readers or whatever, but I guess it's better than nothing.
Yeah, I believe, and Shawn would know better than I am. I'm sure he's got more years under his belt than even I do. I believe that the term for that is I believe the term for that is an information embargo. So,
yeah,
like you said, it's not that we don't have it. It's just that we're waiting for a green light. Now, I think in regard to the best way that I think to have the best of both worlds for me is to say, here's what we know so far. And at the very end of a story, you say, this story is ongoing. We'll have continuous updates, or, some form of that statement, so that they know, it's kind of like when you watch a Blues game, for example, and you're following on Twitter, that's a live thread, so people understand in that regard. So I do think that helps.
I do wish in an unrelated note, I wish sometimes some of the team tweets and various sports tweets would slow down just a little bit when when the broadcast I'm watching is a few seconds behind Twitter, and I find out on my phone the outcome of the game.
Right. Like, oh, shit, you're telling me he scored a goal already? Well, then there goes that one. There goes that little highlight I need to watch.
I didn't even get to do like the 10, 9, 8, if there's a championship. So-and-so win.
Right. So here's something I wanted to definitely bring up. This was something, Shawn, you and I had talked about during one of our earlier conversations. And Dane, I know you'll have a lot to bring to the table on this as well. So once again, it comes to, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. Okay, here we go. So each one of us has our own level of experience. Shawn's been in the business 30 years. I've been in the business 10 years. Dane's been in the business 14 years. And how we all got there were different ways. Dane, you've told me about how for your journalism degree, you had to make a website and, had to do certain things as far as to fill in the quotas, basically, for your degree.
Right.
And Shawn, you've gone in great detail about what, back for you. I'm not trying to say you're old. I promise. I'm just saying back when your career started.
This does it for me.
But back when how it was for you.
What's funny, because I was originally going to be a sports writer, and I actually wrote for the local. I was a newspaper editor in high school. Then I was writing for weekly small town papers, and that's kind of the direction I thought I'd go. And I was going to go to SIU Edwardsville, and they just had this thing with remedial courses. I didn't have an ACT score that was that high because of math, and they said, "Oh, you're only going to get one credit for golf." I said, "I'm out of here." And then, I'm listening to the Lewis and Clark radio station over there in Alton, and they say, "We have play-by-play of Wood River." And I thought, you know what? That'd be kind of a nice way to, kind of like, what's his face from Alabama. I'll go to a junior college and come back. Like the quarterback, and I'll just tinker with radio. And I was in Solon radio. I was being a sports information director. At the time, there was a lot less of me. I thought about television. It was sports on TV was a lot more glamorous then, but I just wound up being good at news, and I just kind of wound up in that direction. And, parents moved out of state, and then I wasn't sure about radio because you don't make much. You
That's
still don't
true.
make much, but I just kind of wound up in it and never got out.
Right.
And done a little bit of everything, and everything from, I got into it to play-by-play. I kept getting squeezed out of that. It's always like, it's like some old quarterback from 30 years ago, does it as a part-time job. And so wound up doing news consistently. I was on a Howard Stern type show, and I was on a station that flipped formats like 4 times in 18 months. It was just, and they sold off an FM, but when the ownership rules changed, that's when things were crazy, because all of a sudden you can own more than 2 stations. Like, in St. Louis, there were a ton of radio buildings. If you go back to the 80s and early 90s, and then dereg happened, and that's when all of a sudden you got 5 or 6 stations in a building. And it became a different world. But before that, I mean, it was, and I forgot what my point was, but it really was a whole different world. And so like when the rules changed and FM from an AM and FM combo I was on was sold, and all of a sudden I'm just doing AM radio again. And, I kind of got in and out of that. And, we had, there were some wild times then, because I had to go chase down the owner to get our paychecks. It was like, we weren't, I mean, like the power was, the power bill wasn't paid at one time. And, there have been crazy things in the business. And I guess that was maybe the craziest time before what we see now with everything going on in newspapers and radio, and to some extent television.
Right. For me, and I couldn't imagine having to you know what? I kind of relate to having to chase the owner down to get a check when it comes to media, except I didn't physically chase him down. I will say, for me, I feel like I this is my 10th year in journalism. This is the decade. This dates back to the high school paper here. And this is something
you
I've
actually
dreamed
had a high school paper,
right? But this is something I've dreamed of since I was 8 years old. So even then, in fact, I have, and I can't reach it at the moment, but I have next to me on the floor a blurb, like demo, if you will, a template from a sports game recap I typed up back in 2003. That was my first way of like trying to get used to this whole thing, how much it meant to me. And the thing of it is, I don't have a journalism degree. I was going to go to St. Charles Community College, then transfer to the J School at Mizzou, get the bachelor's, what basically most people do these days. That's their usual routine. But I didn't have that, because I had a seizure in 2014 and crashed my car into a ravine. And because of my ADD, I struggle focusing in classes as it is. And my whole life just got thrown around. And I don't say any of this to make an excuse, but because I'm damn proud of where I'm at. Like, look at me. I'm hosting a podcast and having dear friends on, and a lot of people are tuning in, loyal listeners, and I'm getting to help make a difference. That's something that I dream of. But I feel bad for those who, because they don't have these long lists of degrees and certificates, they are deemed by society, by companies, as less intelligent than those who do have the degrees. Because, and it's 2022. I'm just going to say it. And I know, Shawn, like I said, we talked about this. Just because you don't have a journalism degree doesn't make you not a journalist.
No,
and it frustrates me that people feel that way.
I don't think J schools are what they used to be. And I think, I think there's still some great J schools, great professors.
Right.
And, but it's like, depending on what area, there are only so many slots. You're not going to get to, like I went to a junior college in a class with, I don't know, 15 to 20 people. We had no problem getting plenty of airtime, improving week to week. But I think you go in there and like, well, you get to do one shift this month. Well, how do you grow doing 9 shifts a school year?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, stuff like that. I know there's some situations where the cream, gets to do a lot of stuff, but it's it's tough. I mean, there's some happy endings in the journalism school, and then there's some that are, a lot of people who walk away with like really don't gain any experience out of it to speak of.
And to kind of piggyback off of what you said, Jeremy. I mean, I think that the degrees obviously lend credibility,
Right.
and I think that people without the degrees are going to take those kind of shots from other people that, oh, you're not a journalist. Well, like, I have 14 years experience, but I'm 27. So what does that mean? That means I started when I was in middle school, and I took it as seriously as one should. And, I remember how proud I was when I hit a decade. I remember how proud I was when I put up my first podcast, when I built my first website, when I got my first, serious interview. I was the youngest person in 2011. I don't remember who they were playing, but in 2011, I at one point got to go to a Cardinals game, and my younger brother was basically my little photographer. My dad was the right there. We knew people who knew people. And aside from my younger brother, I was the youngest person in that press box, and I had like this little recorder, and I did some play-by-play. I was the youngest person in that press box, and I'm, like you said, I'm proud of that. By the time I'm, let me think. By the time I'm 30, I will have been 20 years. So I get where you're coming from. I really do. And you have to think about too the kind of fields that we're talking about. Shawn mentioned radio. That's a field where a degree helps, but it's not entirely necessary. I think the same thing can be said of journalism. I think in the case of journalism as opposed to radio, it helps to have the degree even more so. But it's all really about how long you've been doing it, the quality of the work, how you treat people, your tact in interviewing and things like that. And so you don't necessarily need a degree. So I completely agree with both of you. And sidebar, I would just like to say to Shawn, thank you for mentioning that little station out of Lewis and Clark that you mentioned earlier. That is I am an alum. That is 89.9 WLCA. That is quite possibly the best radio broadcasting program in the state, community college or not. I believe they're the only HD radio station or HD college radio station in the state. And like you said, Jeremy, as well, there are some good programs. I went to Webster. I'm still in contact with my Webster professor, a gentleman by the name of Larry Baden. Now that I've graduated, he's gone from being, a main professor to just a great friend. But he was world class as a professor, as a journalist, and they have the awards to back it up. Webster is also the best program, the best journalism program in the state, at least in my opinion. So I'll just wrap it up by saying this. I think it all comes down to your individual circumstances and how much you really want it, because I have multiple degrees, but I have them for specific reasons. I have them because when I got my radio degree, that was only 2 years. I was really young. I probably, for personal maturity, should have gone to a 4-year from the jump. And so I told my dad basically something along the lines of, hey, I have the degree now. I passed my radio internship, but I'm not ready. Like as a person, I'm not there yet. So that's how Webster came about for me. And then in the process of me getting my journalism degree, because of my issues with things like math and gen eds, which is a whole other rabbit hole, for me to completely be done with college took 7 years. So I'm not telling people not to get these degrees and not to go to college, but really think about it, because my senior year, I'll be honest, I was in counseling because of it, because it was like, I love this so much that it's like, it's not good for me at this point, but I can't let go of it either. But I've put so much work in, I don't know what to do. So, if you're really passionate about it, you're going to find a way, one way or the other, but seriously think about it.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, and Mike does such a great job. I went through the program with Mike Lemons, and yeah, they really. There's a guy who just has a youthful spirit. I mean, he's still in charge, but I just think he always finds a way to connect with young people. Whatever's going on in the world, he just always has that ability. Can't say enough about that, as opposed to, no, here's how we do things. None of that. I mean, he's just able to just really get on your level. I think it's just a neat program.
Right. And
Sorry.
Jeremy, I want to make sure you get to your question, so I don't want to take up too much time, but I want to sidebar again by saying, like Shawn said, Mike still is in charge. Here and there I keep in touch with Mike. And so if there is anybody that is listening that is considering either radio or journalism, specifically radio, I could not recommend WLCA any higher, especially if you want to go into the local market. But there is something, because as part of that program, and Shawn could probably attest to this, it's a 2-year program. And as a second year, which in this case would be a senior, as a second year, you're mandated to have one or more first years under you, and you train them. And so that's how that works. And something I said to a class full of first years a long time ago was a paraphrase of the Shawshank Redemption quote from the warden when you first meet the warden in the movie. And it said for this program, put your trust in the Lord. Your ass belongs to Mike. So just be prepared.
Oh, wow. Well, Dane, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I know Shawn and I still are going to be having our 1v1, but I just want to say, seriously, man, it has been such a great pleasure having you on. I know your 14 years have been nothing but 110% the whole way. The message I'm trying to convey to everybody is that the journey, we're all in it for the same thing right here. We're wanting to do what we love to the best of our abilities for an audience. It's just we all happen to get there different ways over different times. Like I said, the most I have education-wise is an associate's degree in communications. But I've spent 10 years working for websites. I've worked for Channel 5. I've made as many connections as I could, gotten press access. And I do it because I know, I almost feel like for me, it's more of an uphill battle because I don't have, that degree from the J school. And I don't feel ashamed about it. I'm always up for a good challenge anyway. But to be able to have, you, Shawn, and Dane, you on as guests, and like last week I had Adam and James, and just having Barackus on earlier. Like, this is what I enjoy. So Dane, I'm gonna let you go. I know, because Shawn and I are gonna keep this show rolling a little bit, but I seriously, man, you're a rock. Thank you so much for being on. I can't wait to see you in person again soon. Okay, buddy?
All right, you too. Thank you so much. Yeah,
you're welcome.
The last time we saw each other was AEW Rampage, so I'm sure it's probably going to be a local wrestling show or something along those lines. You guys have a great show. Thank you again for having me on. Be safe out there, especially with this weather.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Dane McGuire on Roundabout Sports. Nothing but love for him.
Good meeting you, brother.
Oh, Shawn, I got to ask you. Yeah, it's great. He's seriously such a nice guy. He is one hell of a journalist, and he's poured his heart and soul into what he does. But I'll tell you who isn't pouring their heart and soul into what they're doing right now. That's Major League Baseball. because they are at a complete standstill with the Players Association. And I want your opinion on it, because this lockout, I've talked to people, and you hear it all the time. There is no end in sight of this lockout. The only thing they've agreed on is a universal designated hitter. What is your thoughts going on in regards to what's happening in Major League Baseball?
I think the commissioner is a disaster. Hey, I understand growing the game. I understand all this talk of, oh, we're losing Gen Y. Well, everything. I think some way, some traditions are going to survive. I think, some, who knows, but you can't change something into something else completely different. And I don't know, I think everything he's done, I think there's a lot of passive aggressive activity on the part of the commissioner. I just think ball players are saying, you know what, this game's played a certain way. And the DH argument, I'm sure the players are kind of, split on that. It's like, well, we do like to have more jobs for guys out there. And, maybe, if my glove really goes south, I'll have a chance to stay in baseball longer. So I think maybe there's some conflict there, but the runner on second base in extra innings, it's almost like there's gaslighting by Manfred. He uses a COVID or something. He uses these opportunities to all of a sudden unleash his mad scientist ideas. And I think he wants this fight and is trying to, I don't know, build his power by making the players look like the bad guy. I don't know, but he seems to be just a schemer. It's hard to know how much to blame the players. It really, it's tricky. The thing is, baseball has these, we saw it in hockey. Baseball has these work stoppages. We're going to try and contain costs, and we're going to, make sure we don't have $150 baseball seat, on the third deck. And then, right away, they're signing players to ridiculous contracts. The players don't put a gun to their head. It's just a mess. They make some kind of advances to make, baseball, which will never get the contracts football does, try to make it, economically sensible. And they they wind up shooting themselves in the feet. And, Manfred, I don't know. They're just that guy. He makes me cringe sometimes. I don't know. I don't know what it takes to energize the fans they're looking for. But I see plenty of young baseball fans out there. I think I think if anything, we don't need crazy gimmicks. Speed up the game, call strikes, don't destroy. And I'm sure one of the things, I'm sure it's not talked about much, but I can imagine the players union isn't too hip on this business of leaving a young pitcher starting his career, getting called up, hoping to stay or hoping to make an impression for the future. Hey, you got to stay in there and face three batters or get 3 outs, whatever the heck, whatever we come up with this week. That can't sit well with some guys because you know how it is. You can put a guy out there and destroy him. Now, I mean, I'm not going to be a hypocrite either. I mean, one of the things that does get to me later in a game is one pitcher. All right. He comes out to one hitter. All right. We're going to go to the right-hander. Here comes, because the baseball game's at a great pace, innings 1 through 6. So I get what the commissioner's, talking about. And I realize I'm getting away from the negotiations, but I almost think some of these things have created a gulf between the players and the and the league. But I just think I don't know, it just seems gimmicky. And baseball, you can do things to adjust to the times, but it can't be reduced to gimmicks. And I think there's just a lot of gimmickry and this business of leaving pitchers out there to die, like the vultures are flying in, waiting waiting to feast on them because they've lost their confidence. And some guys will bounce back, others won't. It's hard to know what's going on. Donald Fear talked a lot more when he was the head of the players union. I mean, they didn't share everything. Marvin Miller talked a lot more. This is a players union that doesn't really negotiate in public, I think, the way they did under some of the predecessors. So, in one hand, maybe my anti-Manfred bias comes into play, but on the other, it's like, yeah, you know what? I could say the owner's the bad seed, but the players really aren't showing their cards that much in the public. Or just hearing, hey, negotiations went well. No, they didn't go well.
Right. And, when I look at, Donald Fear was the head of the players union back when the 94-95 strike happened. And you had mentioned he went flat out and said, we got no trust in Bud Selig. We have absolutely zero trust at all in him. And, they made it clear because the owners were basically saying small market clubs would fall unless teams agreed to share local broadcasting revenues and enact the salary cap. And the players wanted no part of that.
Oh, boy. Heavy-handed. I remember they were going to contract, a couple of franchises. Yeah, that was intense.
Right. And it was at the end of 1993, the collective bargaining agreement ended and there was no new agreement. And Donald Fear made it clear, if there's no new serious negotiation soon, we're not playing. We're not going out there. There's not going to be a regular season. There's probably not going to be a postseason. And they go out there, and the season happens up until, I believe it was August of 1994, I believe August 12th. And by that point, the World Series gets canceled, the postseason's canceled, and the repercussions long-term it had, it's basically the reason the Montreal Expos don't exist anymore. They were 74-40. They were 6 games ahead, and I had mentioned this to James last week, because he even remembers this. The Expos were considered the World Series contenders, the favorites at that point in the season. And they had the second lowest payroll in baseball. The strike hit, they did a fire sale, and they could never recover. And eventually they were bought by Major League Baseball and then basically shipped off to Washington to become the Nationals. And, a lot of people are wondering, so that's a long-term repercussion from that strike. A lot of people are wondering, especially since this is the second stoppage in 2 years second stoppage in 3 years because of the pandemic shortened season. So it brings up the question, what could some of the long-term repercussions be of this? First off, all trust of Manfred is out the door. Rob Manfred, and I mentioned this last week, is probably the most despised commissioner in sports right now. Like, Goodell's just fun to boo. We'll put it this way. Goodell's fun to boo. Yeah. Adam Silver's a good commissioner. And honestly, Gary Bettman, his reputation has improved in recent years, especially since he's expanded more back into the Canadian markets as well. And, a lot of people love the fact that he awarded Seattle a franchise. A lot of people love that. So,
and the thing that strikes me about Gary Bettman, a lot of people didn't like how he NBAized the NHL and took away the conference names and all that. But and I know Goodell gets booed at the draft and has a little fun with it, but it's a little less personal. It's not as frequent as what Bettman deals with. Bettman goes out there, knows he's going to get the boo birds, like a big murder of crows, as they call it. And he stands out there and he thanks the fans for paying his salary, for supporting the league. It's sincere, and he takes it. He takes it like a man. I don't picture Rob Manfred going out on the field, putting himself in that position. Wouldn't happen.
Because he hides. He is To me, he's a businessman, not a baseball fan. That is the difference, and that is why he is. Bud Selig was a baseball owner. He at least could relate to a lot of things in the baseball business and why he tried to work things out. But Rob Manfred is a lawyer. Like, that's not going to really help your case to get on player sides, and the owners just want to use you as a puppet. So right now, Rob Manfred's up Crap Creek without a paddle, and he's having to paddle with his hands right now.
Yeah, he's just, and he's one of those people. He's like those, and like I'm not a fan of, these shows where they go in and choose between the three houses, and it's like, oh, I don't like that one. That light switch is terrible, and then they just like, whatever, dump all over. I don't know, and I realize it's a TV show and you can't make it boring, but I just don't want to go into somebody's house and say this is gosh, these furnishings are horrible. This is a dump. I like somewhere out there, somebody who loved that person who furnished the place is out there watching. That's, but I picture Rob Manfred like, that's terrible. That's awful. Oh my God. What, I just got to change things to change things. Let's get rid of that, even though it works. Let's move that. It's just a deck chair rearranger, on the Titanic. He drives me crazy. And then just little things like telling Mike Trout he needs to market himself better. And it's like, just leave well enough alone. Mike Trout does enough for the game on his own.
Right. Mike Trout is literally the biggest superstar since Albert Pujols. And
it's their job to market him. It's not the player's job.
Right. And it's not Mike Trout's fault that the Angels can't build a decent team. Like it's amazing. You got the MVP in Ohtani, you got a future Hall of Famer in Trout, and who's probably the best player of this generation. Or I should say the past 10 years, the decade. I consider Pujols the best of this whole generation. And then you did have Pujols, who was still doing really well. And you had you had Ben Zobrist, you had a lot of other star players. And you couldn't do shit in your division. You were constantly at the bottom. You made maybe 2 playoff appearances. Mike Trout is going to be, to me, like the Barry Sanders of Major League Baseball if he does not go to a different team. Because he's going to be that guy who's going to have so many records, so many accolades, so much popularity, beloved by fans and teammates, but he's not going to have a championship because the Angels are terribly run.
It's funny, and Artie Moreno just kept getting rejected, trying to get big free agents, and I know there was that period where the Dodgers had the dysfunctional ownership, the owners on the verge of divorce, and he's thinking like, I got a chance to really get a fat TV deal, and let's bring Pujols in. It's like, I didn't like seeing Pujols go, but I saw him just and some guys told me I was full of it. You're a news guy. But I saw him waddle to the dugout, and I thought, that guy's got a before he left St. Louis, I thought that guy's got a broken down lower half, and it turned out to be that the plantar fasciitis was that bad, on top of whatever else he's dealing with. But yeah, sure enough, I'm still amazed at what he did with the Dodgers. That doesn't even seem possible to me. As beat down, but I guess sometimes a new environment and maybe not seeing a lot of playing time open the door to having that little second wind.
Yeah. No, I really, it just boggles my mind. And
the Angels, they have a hard time. They get some talent, but they just cannot get over the hump. They can't get that big free agent. I don't know if the OC just is too suburban for these athletes who want the city life and the bright lights of LA, but Orange County and LA couldn't be any more different.
Very different indeed. So, Shawn, I gotta ask you one more question. First off, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I'm glad you've taken time. I know you've had a crazy day like usual, so to get you on the show is always a great pleasure.
Well, I have no social life, so that helps.
Yeah. Well, I know the viewers tuning in are really thankful for that. So my last question for you is, where can people tune in to hear your voice? I know you've been in this business a long time, and I know you always got a lot to say. So,
Well, you know, it's funny. In my last job, they really, they really were obsessed with what are you doing? You know, like I had little side projects, like I do imaging, like, hey, yeah, another 7 in a row, that kind of station voice guy stuff. So as far as actual content, I do news on WJVO 105.5 FM in Jacksonville. They're not on the web. Jacksonville, Illinois. My day gig is 106.1 FM WSMI. Newscasts at 7:45, 12:15, 5:25, also 8:20 and 5:40. Madison County newscast. Then I 1:40 to 2 o'clock. I talk with my old friend John Michael Marty. We try to solve all the world's problems, offer inane commentary and bad jokes. So I do that, and then on mornings doing weather with a little bit of attitude, spicing it up a little bit instead of talking about weather models and all that stuff on 93.1 KBDZ. Yeah, most of the St. Louis Metro, based out of Perryville, Missouri, and then then I'm kind of sprinkled around here and there as far as being like I said, a station voice in Alton, Sparta, Fairfield, Murfreesboro, and so you might hear me, driving through wherever in the boonies, whatever the case may be. Then I forgot I do traffic for Nashville station Hippie 94.5.
there you go. And you got the radio voice, so I love to hear it. So, ladies and gentlemen, Shawn Balint. Shawn, thank you so much for being on this evening. I can't wait for you to be on again. You have yourself a wonderful night.
A pleasure, my friend.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Shawn Balint here on Roundabout Sports. Wow, what a amazing night we have had, folks. Like I said, Mother Nature has tried to shut us down, but we keep going. And speaking of keeping going, I'm going to put it at the bottom like I always do. For those that do need that helping hand, the National Suicide Hotline, 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. It's 1-800-273-8255. That's the United States National Suicide Hotline. Understand that you are never alone. There is always someone out there who loves you. I'd like to give a special thanks to Dane McGuire, Shawn Balint, and Barackus for being on this evening. And I also want to let all of you know that tomorrow night, Talking Dynasty, hosted by our very own Adam Frex, is coming back. It'll be right here on StreamYard on Interstate 70 Sports Media, 7:30 Central Standard Time. You will not want to miss it. Adam Frex has really been working to get the Talking Dynasty brand back up, helping expand on that. He's got a lot of things KC to talk about. He's got a lot of things professional to talk about. So you do not want to miss that. Once again, Talking Dynasty, hosted by Adam Frex, tomorrow night, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in this evening. It's been a pleasure as always. Next week, we're having Tyoka Jackson, legendary defensive end for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the St. Louis Rams. I look forward to that, and I hope you do too. Just remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. This is Jeremy Carp saying good night.